I could have sold at any time.
Hmm.
12 of our largest competitors have been bought in the last 13 years. Every one of them is monetized. If we wanted to be monetized, we could run a process starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. and we could exit out. But we really like our businesses. We like running them. So this was another way of kind of like you're talking about was like of just making this evolution as an
Hmm.
entrepreneur to say, this is like the next gen of people that were going to come in to run the businesses. But that required me then to kind of, if you will, evolve out. So I had to say, hey, look, I'm going to identify the team. We're going to empower the team, but then I got to get the hell out of the way if I really, really want great quality people.
Welcome to Entrepreneurism. I'm your host, Scott Pollock, a seasoned business leader, entrepreneur, and CEO coach with a passion for helping others achieve success in their entrepreneurial journeys. On this show, we dive deep into the world of entrepreneurship, uncovering why so many struggle and revealing what the most successful do differently. True entrepreneurs have unique superpowers, including the ability to spot hidden business opportunities and convert them into thriving ventures. For most mere mortals, this ability is absolutely unfathomable. But these same strengths can become sources of struggle, whether it's pursuing multiple opportunities without losing focus, scaling without eroding culture, or balancing short-term demands with long-term vision. The entrepreneur's journey is full of tensions. Here we explore critical factors that drive entrepreneurial success. How to stay focused, manage resources, build strong teams, and develop the resilience to navigate the ups and downs of the journey. Bold ideas, candid conversations, and insights that will help you unlock your full potential. Ready to learn and grow, expand your toolkit, and discover actionable strategies to help you navigate your own entrepreneurism? Let's dive in. On the podcast, I'm thrilled to have my friend, Fred Crosetto, a consummate entrepreneur who's built a truly global business. Welcome, Fred.
Great to be here, Scott.
So a little more introduction. Fred is chairman at AMMEX Group. He founded AMMEX in 1988 with a focus on disposable gloves. And today, the group is doing almost $300 million in revenue with products that enhance health, hygiene, and safety across a wide spectrum of industries. With operations in North America, China, and Southeast Asia. In more recent years, they built and spun out a fast-growing offshore BPO that's business process outsourcing and call center business called iSupport Worldwide. And that business is approaching 2,000 full-time employees. For many of us, Fred is a true scaling up role model. When I decided to become a scale-up coach myself, the first coaching certification I got was in scaling up. And if you open up Verne Harnish's book by that name and turn to page 180, there's a picture of a much younger Fred doing a daily huddle with his leadership team. Well, enough of me talking. Fred, perhaps you can talk briefly about how you started your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, it seems like a long time ago. Actually, I'm from Seattle and I went to the University of Washington. And as a kid, I was always doing something. I always thought it was better to work for myself than work for somebody else. When I came out of the university, I really wanted to go to the import export business. I didn't have any leads, didn't have any speak any languages. And as a result, I wasn't on anybody's like top list because I wasn't a very good student either. At that particular time, I had read a book by John Naismith called Megatrends. And the ninth trend, I still remember this today, was about Asia and that Asia was going to be kind of the future for things. And being in Seattle was there. So I decided that when I got done, I was just going to leave and I was going to go to every country in Asia and look around. So when I was 22, I just packed my bags, left to Asia. Most people went to Europe. I went to Asia, went to every country. I came back. I thought my best opportunities were in Taiwan. Packed my bags, took all the money I had, and moved to Taiwan, and thought I would start anything I could start. And that's kind of how we got going. And I rattled around there for a little while, and then learned a little Chinese. And then a guy approached me and says, "You know anything about latex gloves?" And I said, "What do you want to know?" I mean, I didn't know anything. But at that particular time, the world was changing because of AIDS. and looked into it. I said, look, I'll do this with you guys, but I want to be part of it. So we started a company and AMMEX, and like a lot of companies, it was supposed to go, up, 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 up. It kind of went up a little, then just down, and it was a complete disaster. And all the guys I was working with pretty much just decided that they didn't want to do it. And I was the only one that stuck with it. And I mean, we were in a big hole, but I thought fundamentally there's just going to be a strong demand for disposable gloves going on in the future. And so I just stuck with that. Worked with the company, kind of turned it around. We got it going. We just built it up. I mean, it was a super modest venture to start. But just from there, it just kind of took off and then kept going and going and going. And it's where it is today.
Amazing, amazing. Not unusual, obviously, the rocky road in the early days. What would you say? I mean, you know, I know you're quite modest in many ways, but what would you say is your entrepreneurial superpower that propelled you forward and that really got this business moving?
I don't know if I would say my entrepreneurial thing, my superpower, the thing I guess I'm really good at now that I think I've honed over the years. I don't know if that really helped me along the way. I mean, I think I got better at that, but I think at that particular time, we talk about the word entrepreneur. I never really liked the word entrepreneur because it gets bandied about. And when I started, I didn't even think of myself as an entrepreneur. I thought I was like, I'm just a guy starting a business, which was kind of unusual at the time. Most people did not do that right away. So I'm just hoping that at the end of every week that I can sell enough gloves that maybe I have enough money that I can go out to dinner with my friends. And so it was pretty modest. I mean, it was blocking and tackling basic business, and I think it was constantly just showing up. Um, when you're starting a business, and I look back and over the business, and people say, what was the hardest time? Really, the beginning was the hardest time. It was getting to the first couple million, because you just don't have a team. You just you're chief cook and bottle washer. You're doing everything, and there's always gaps in your business, and you just have to keep going. And every kind of every little step can be is a big step forward. So I look back, and those were the most challenging times. But it was showing up, moving ahead, pivoting, adapting. There's lots of companies that we competed against that failed, but we just kind of kept going forward and made the right decisions in a lot of places, and made good bets, and more often than not, did the right things right at the right time, and got to the next level.
So you talked about, first of all, sales obviously was critical, right? And I know you are a seller fundamentally. That's one of the things that I think you have, and a lot of CEOs, I think, or founders have to be able to sell their product, but you really believe in that. Maybe you talk a little bit about that, but also then how did you go from being the chief of everything, which a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in that position today, right? That they're the ones that have to drive just about everything in the business, to having a scalable foundation, um, where you're not the chief of everything.
I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, people don't like the word sales, but the reality is you have to sell. And you have to sell yourself, you have to sell the company, you have to sell the product, the service, whatever it is, but you got to get out there and sell. And you probably, as the founder, or the person in the best position to do that. So, I was selling. I mean, we would commonly pick up the phone. People weren't exactly beating down the doors to buy gloves. And so we would get on the phone and just start calling people. We found ways. We didn't have any money. So one thing we did was we just sold gloves over the phone by an 800 number. And then we would do mailings, and we'd send stuff out. Mailings. Yes, you'd send stuff through the mail. People would call. They see a little box of gloves, and they call and they buy them. And we did all kinds of stuff. And we were good at that. Somebody once gave me a piece of advice that, I think today is still the biggest piece of advice I had. The best piece I had was, he goes, make your strengths productive and your weaknesses irrelevant. And he goes, if you just focus on solving a problem, all you're going to do is get back to equal. But if you focus on an opportunity and you nail that opportunity, you're going to make a quantum leap forward. So, what are my strengths? My strengths were selling, marketing, leading. What weren't they? IT, accounting, all the other stuff that you did. And so early on, I tried to find the best people I could at each of those positions to just help drive along the journey. And I really kept it narrow, what I thought I was good at and where I could deliver value. And further, and that became easier as it went on, as the business got bigger and bigger because you could evolve out of it. So we've always had great accounting people, great accounting and finance people. We've always had great CTOs. I can't do anything with technology, so there was things I just realized that I can't do everything. And I think this is a mistake that really traps and limits and puts a ceiling under most entrepreneurs is they feel or they have to be the smartest person in the room on everything. I think if you're the smartest, I mean, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And so doing that, I think helped me. And I said, look, I just had a kind of a maniacal focus on the things where I could deliver value as the CEO or the founder or whatever, and push forward with that.
That's great advice. I mean, focus on your strengths is, I think, really core to succeeding in just about anything. So that's a good one. Talk a little bit about maybe what was your greatest personal struggle, and how did you conquer it? I mean, this is you as the founder, as the person leading this business.
I don't know if it is for other people, but for me, business is tough. Business is a constant battle, because it's fast moving. It's always changing. And it just requires and even today more so than before was a 24/7 focus. So we were in a kind of a basic business. We just had to like I was really focused, I mean, on scaling and growing the business. So I wasn't content with just kind of like idling along. So we always had to push and grow. And as we're doing that, we were sometimes always felt like we were a day late and a dollar short. We were always, there was always some battle being fought, whether we were, I mean, we went through like 7 banks in 12 years. Not because we were bad customers, just because we would go and say, "I want to grow." And they go, "We don't really like you to grow that much." Well, then okay, well, that doesn't really work for us. So, how do you do that? And how do you, like one of the things we did, Scott, was, I mentioned this before, is in none of our businesses, we never took outside money. So we always
Mm,
looked for the business to fundamentally, be able to make money. Every business had to make money. And then secondly, we wanted to find external financing, which was commercial financing, whether it was a commercial loan or asset-based lending or something. Fortunately, when we were in a product-based business, we were kind of the top of the pledge class with our products, and we were able to do that. So we were able to borrow about that. But still, if we were growing at periods sometimes where we were doubling every 2 years or growing substantially, you had to manage that cash flow
mm,
with with the organic growth. And then at the same time too is morphing along throughout these periods of, let's say, the rise of the internet, the rise of e-commerce, the rise of, all the other, dot-com meltdowns and things like that. It was just, there was always something. I mean, I just came back from a meeting and I talked to our team in the Philippines, and there was a lot of angst and things right now about the tariffs and uncertainty. And I just reminded them again. I went around the room. I said, "Hey, can you ever cite for me a time in your life, in your economic life, when there was certainty? Because by God, I want to know when it was, because I don't have any in mind. Every day there's just levels of uncertainty. But uncertainty creates opportunity. And opportunity is when you can really then move the ball down the field."
yeah. Yeah. I mean, and with crisis comes opportunity, right? So, yeah, that's a good one. You talk. I know you focus for you, and you mentioned it a couple times here. But focus also has been really a core principle in the path that you've taken with Amex, um, as well as focus within the operations and the execution being a key principle. Talk a little bit about that, and about how focus has really been core.
I think it's a great thing, because the reality is with most entrepreneurs, focus is a problem because they like to focus any shiny object that comes along. And I can't I have, the truth be told, I've been, fallen victim to that numerous times. But my experience is, and if we go back and we look at, we were very fortunate to meet, Verne Harnish, or early. I wish I'd met him earlier in my career, but in the late 1990s, and began using his, the principles of his book. Before he realized scaling up, he had mastering business dynamics. He had some other things, but they were kind of based on the same concepts of what you see in Verne's Scaling Up book today, which
Yeah.
I really think is just the template for success. If you just take that and follow that, your chances of success like grow exponentially. Okay, so scaling up in any business, and we just use that as, what you do is scaling up. If you want to scale, it really requires you to focus and prioritize. And if you prioritize and then you layer the focus on the prioritization, then it really allows you to say, this is what we're going to do. And I think this is an important thing to do. And this is what we're not going to do. You have to
Mm,
be really clear. These are the 5 things. Somebody said, well, I want to do this. Well, that's great. You got to go do that somewhere else because this is what we're doing here. And these are the 5 things. And unless you're doing something, everything you do has to roll up into one of those 5 things. And so, or 3 things or whatever it might be. So
yep.
I think if you bring, I mean, my experience, what's been a great experience for me is I look back and we've had situations where we've done exceedingly well in business. It's usually because we focused and then we executed and we delivered our outcomes we wanted. You look back and you say, "Gosh, there were some times maybe when we were didn't really land the arrow where we were supposed to." You go down, you do an after action review, and it's like we just weren't focused. We lost focus on what we wanted to do. We didn't have the priorities straight, and as a result, we didn't get there. All you can, but overall, I think it comes down to that. And focus is it's a habit, and you just have it's a muscle you develop, and if the organization gets really good at it, then it's just like you go from one win to the next.
Yep. Yeah, and well, it's a muscle that's got to be developed. I talk often about what I call the entrepreneurial condition, which is that entrepreneurs the superpower is to be able to spot these opportunities that other people don't even see, and to be able to turn them into real businesses. But the flip side to that is that a lot of true entrepreneurs are going to see, as you said, the shiny object everywhere they look, and there's opportunities everywhere. But if they don't have the focus to carry through, then the businesses that they're starting oftentimes aren't going to go anywhere. So
Well, like with Scott, when we met in China, one of the big challenges I think that a lot of entrepreneurs ran into in China was, particularly, let's say, from about, 2005 to up to the pandemic in 2020. There was just opportunity on every street corner, everywhere you went. There were so many things you could do. And the real opportunity, it was like it's like you were like a bus. You could sit at the bus stop and buses would come by all day long and each one of them was an opportunity. You just had to determine what bus you were going to get on and where you were going to go. And I
so
think
true.
that I look back and when we talked, met and we worked with a lot of people and various things and helped them with some of the scaling up tools was there was just a lack of focus and they just
Mm,
couldn't there was almost like too many choices in the entrepreneur aisle that day, and we just people couldn't focus. And by the time they got in, they just never got that traction to get to that next level. Or they might have been like somebody says, "Well, I have 5 businesses, and they're all doing I don't know 300,000 or 400,000, but all of them are you're not hitting on execution, you're not hitting on cash, you're not hitting on people, and you're not hitting on strategy." So it was a struggle for a lot of people, and I think that's common, and that's why sometimes people don't necessarily hit land the arrow on the first try.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's super common, and that's the point. Is that it requires effort to hone those muscles and to build those habits in order to get past that. So, in many ways, I would say that you've achieved the dream of entrepreneurs. If you think about the long term vision for many entrepreneurs, of course they want to achieve their underlying vision for why they started their business, but they'd also like to be able to someday step back, that I don't want to always be the head of the business, the CEO running everything. I'd love to be the chairman. I can still be involved. I can still be giving guidance and helping with the vision, but I want to be able to install leaders across the very various parts of my business who really are going to be doing the heavy lifting, and you've achieved that. Talk a little bit about that transition. I mean, I know that wasn't just an overnight thing, and how'd you get there?
So I would kind of let's break this down into 2 parts. Um, I would say probably about 17 years into the business. Um, I was in EO and I was in a group. I'm still in a group. I'm still in EO and I'm also in YPO. I went to a forum meeting, made a presentation about the business, what I wanted to do, where I was going to take it, and then I was going to take it to this level and blah 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 blah, and I was going to sell it. Man, I had all the numbers. I had the thing. I went in there and I laid it out, and they just kicked the shit out of me up and down the field for like 90 minutes. And I remember like, I mean, I think I crawled out of there like, lower than a snake's belly. But I remember one guy said something to me, and I'd known him from my EO years, and he goes, you know how hard it is to start a business? He goes, all you're going to do if you do that and sell that business, you'll just have a big bunch of money and you'll just go out and start another business. And I go, yeah, okay, But the takeaway for me was when I sat and reflected on it is that I had a really solid business, and I decided walking out of that meeting that day, well, maybe not the day I walked out, but the next day after I licked my wounds, was I'm going to use the business as a platform. We're going to stick the core business, which was AMMEX, in the middle with the North American glove business, which was growing really well. And this is right before the financial crisis. And this is about '06, '07. So I looked at that, decided to rework the business, went in and stopped doing got rid of 75% of our SKUs and did that business simultaneously. I said, okay, that's going to be the platform. I moved to China with our three youngest kids and decided we wanted to do stuff in China. And we thought we were looking for an opportunity to do the same thing there. And then we simultaneously opened a business in the Philippines then to help drive our North American operations. But that was what I would characterize as kind of this platform moment where we put everything in the middle and we then begin to develop businesses alongside it. So then we could use the shared services of, of finance, IT, or whatever. And those businesses had some kind of overlap. And then we could also use the financing aspect of it. So when we went into China, we necessarily didn't have money when we got going, but we were able to lever off the US operations, for a period of time before we got that going. Likewise with the Philippines, that's what we did when we went in originally just to build a captive for ourselves to help drive our North American operations because we were struggling to hire and retain good quality workers in Seattle. And in the meantime, people started approaching us saying, hey, can you do the same thing for us? So that was kind of the platform. But then what that did is that allowed us then as the structure to build different teams and then which we then kind of oversaw. Now, fast forward that, let's say that goes on and we start to look at this about 7, 8 years ago. I looked at it as like, hey, you've got all these businesses, and for a while, I mean, I might be here, I might be in this, I might be that. Reality is each of these businesses grew and it developed and it was kicking ass. The reality is I wasn't the one necessarily to be involved in running all those or doing them. Now
Hmm.
I wanted to be involved in them, but where I needed to be as involved was one, what can I do to bring value? Because if I'm not bringing value and I'm just getting in the way, then come on, I don't want to I don't want to be ruining somebody's day. Secondly, then I want to be something that was, giving me energy where I was in there saying, hey, I can work on this. So it's clearly wasn't going to be doing like IT strategy. So we looked at each of the businesses and we said, hey, look, we're going to put great leadership teams in there. And we then, brought people up through the company, put them into roles, whether it was the CEO, CFO, CTO. We brought in people from outside, team members in from outside because, some of the talent, particularly as you're scaling a business fast, you can't develop it fast enough. And you also need people that have been there, done that before that can do that. So that was a knowing thing that we did where I said, look, I don't, I had a choice. I could have sold at any time.
Hmm.
12 of our largest competitors have been bought in the last 13 years. Every one of them is monetized. If we wanted to be monetized, we could run a process starting tomorrow at 8 a.m. and we could exit out. But we really like our businesses. We like running them. So this was another way of kind of like you're talking about was like of just making this evolution as an
Hmm.
entrepreneur to say this is like the next gen of people that were going to come in to run the businesses. But that required me then to kind of, if you will, um, evolve out. So I had to say, hey, look, I'm going to identify the team. We're going to empower the team but then I got to get the hell out of the way if I really, really want great quality people, because no great leader, no great person's going to come join your team, a player, and want to be micromanaged by some doddering old timer that, wants to tell you what, like bottles used to like drink bottle soda water or something like that. Anyways, so we did that, and that was I think that's worked out pretty well. Lets everybody breathe, lets everybody grows, and then we just overlay, just bring in the same principles, and we use the same language and principles that we use in scaling up, and everybody does that. And so today, across all the operating companies, I'm not involved in any of the day-to-day operations. I spend a certain amount of hours each week, maybe with each team, some more than others. Some businesses I just gravitate to a little more. Like I'm
Mhm.
spending a lot more time on the Philippines iSports side because that business is just really growing, and there's just tremendous interest from a lot of people we know that are coming and talking to us. So I think for the entrepreneur, um, for me, that's been great. It allows me to retain, kept the businesses, work with them, stay involved. We haven't had to sell. Maybe we'll sell in the future, and also can get me involved too. Then to still say, hey, if we see new opportunities, that we can bring more opportunities to the platform. I think like we're working on a situation right now. Um, we've always looked at like some of these businesses that accidental. Um, I think we're going to spin an AI service business out of our Philippines business within the
Mm.
next 6 months. And we're doing it and we're perfecting it. But we've been perfecting that across all our businesses. And we might even be able to spin that business out of our core businesses because we've leaned in so heavily in AI on so many things. And we're saying now, well, we could just take this to all our clients and work with them. And
Right.
so that opens up another opportunity for a leader to emerge within our company to be part of that. And then, just add that to the platform.
I love that model, and I know, yeah, I know we could do a whole episode on what you guys have been doing with AI for someone like yourself, who you said is far from a techie, but you got your teams really engaged there to figure out what they could do. And that model of building things internally and spinning them out, which, of course, one of the biggest success stories that I can think of in that vein is AWS and Amazon. Where you build it for yourself, you make it into something that's world class, and then everyone else wants to buy it. So super cool, and we'll be staying tuned to hear how the AI platform works once that sees the light of day. Um, just curious. I mean, along this journey again of you getting out of the way, and I like the way you put that. Um, did you have days, or do you still have days that sometimes you feel like you put your baby up for adoption, or has it been fairly easy for you to sort of take on that new?
Well, I mean, you probably should get outside verification on this, but I mean, from the people that are, from the team leaders that are running and stuff. Look, I think with every business, there's some days you really want to be in the business more than others.
Yeah.
There's other days when you just really don't even want to open up your iPhone to see kind of what's in the email string. But no, I think overall, it's like I think what I tried to come to the reconciliation on is that when you bring somebody new in, just like on a sports team, when you have like you might have a great legendary coach, and then the next coach comes, and it's going to be the team. It can be legendary. It's just going to be different.
Yeah.
And so, and I think it also is something too, you have to be mindful as the leader and maybe the entrepreneur and leader is that when you leave, that maybe some of the people that knew you or that really attracted you aren't going to have this, they're going to have a different experience than with the new leader. And it might be hard for them. I know when I stepped out, I was still doing stuff, it's like, hey, well, I'm going to go talk to Fred. Like, "Hey, you can come talk to me all you want, but she's in charge. You know what I mean? And she's in charge and she's gonna do it. And I hear what you're saying, I'm gonna explain it, but really, she's the one that's gonna make the decision on where we're going forward with this.
Yeah. And that's super important, that it's got to be crystal clear within the organization when you've made that transition, that it can't be, I'm going to go, if I don't get the answer I want from mom, I'm going to go talk to dad. There's got to be
And
real
I
clarity.
think we've been pretty good with that. We use coaches with our leaders when they came in and worked through a process, and we're pretty mindful of it. And I would say maybe for me, having done so many different things, um, that I wasn't just fixated on one. If I just had one thing, maybe I'd be a little more fixated on it. and there was other stuff. And frankly, for me personally, at that level too, there's other things I wanted to go out and do. And I had operated everything, so I knew how to do it. I just look, I'd done that. And and some people, they love that routine, and some entrepreneurs, they want to, and that's how they everybody subscribes their value to something. And so some people believe that it's really important to be involved in those day-to-day things and taking the call and the stress. That, I don't know, that just wasn't something that resonated with me.
Right. Right.
And frankly, the reality is business moves so much faster today, and it's only accelerating, and there's so many new tools, and there's so much new technology. And there's just, I mean, look, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today talk about CEOs and Fortune 1000 companies turning over more in the last 12 months than any time, because the speed of what shit just happens is
Mm,
mind-boggling. And to keep up with that today, um, frankly, I think that kidding yourself if it's a young person's game.
yeah.
That doesn't mean, but the day in and day out, somebody that's younger is going to outrun. They're just going to be steeped in tools and way of trains of thought and stuff like that that would be hard for somebody else, maybe from an older generation, to keep up with.
Yeah. Well, I get that, but I'm sure that they still get a lot of great wisdom from you, and your legacy continues. So
Well,
that's a good balance. You
look,
got to.
I don't look. I'm not saying you can't add value. I just don't want to keep running around the track at 168 beats per minute. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my knee will give out.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So quickly changing gears, I want to do a couple of or a few rapid fire questions, just to do a segment that I've been doing on the podcast since the beginning. First one: what's one book every entrepreneur should read?
And right now, I just read a book that I think that every entrepreneur should read right now. Is AI Driven Leadership by Jeff Woods.
Good one.
Um, I mean, look, you can add Verne Harnish's Scaling Up. You can go with Jim Collins, Built to Last, Good to Great, Great by Choice. I mean, those are all like table stakes. Phil Knight, I always loved Shoe Dog. That just
Yeah,
resonated with me. But I think right now, the one I just finished that I've got everybody reading, which I think is really is important, is AI Driven Leadership by Jeff Woods.
makes
Also,
sense.
Asha Saxena has one called The AI Factor, which we've read, which is really good too.
Yep, yep, yep. That one I've read. It's funny that you mentioned Phil Knight, because when you were talking about the switching banks and the sort of cash flow challenges, that was the first thing I was thinking about with Shoe Dog. Very very similar kind of story.
Oh, when I read that book, I just couldn't put it down. I was just grinning from ear to ear, like all the crap we went through and all the stuff he went, and it just, like particularly the early days. So I can, and then it was kind of early on in Asia, like he was, and I mean, Asia
Yeah,
35 years ago was way different than today.
absolutely. What's one thing you do every morning to set yourself up for success?
You know, I wish I had something to say. I woke up at 4:04 every day and did something. No, reality is, Scott, I just probably just get up every day and just get going.
That works.
And it's not always at the same time, and it's not always at the same speed, but it's like, you got to get up. Let's go.
Yep, yep. There you go. And good days and bad days. What's a tool or app that you can't live without?
Probably my iPhone. Every time I lay it down, I forget somewhere. I panic. So I would say that, particularly for me, would be just the fact mobility's just changed everything.
Yeah.
And that today is like, I was just in, Philippines, Dubai, Malta, Paris over the last 9 days, and it's just, you're just carrying everything on your phone, and I think people take that for granted. Where I think back to when we did stuff before, 20, 25 years ago, it wasn't like that. If I went to Asia for 10 days, I was like off the grid. I was like, it was like apocalypse now. It's like you didn't show back up out of it until you came out of the jungle in southern Thailand. So, anyways, I think that would be, I mean,
Yeah, that makes sense.
like the iPhone, any type of mobility tool. And then obviously all the apps. I mean, I never was a big app person, but now it's like the more once you get used to them, it's like I just find like, now you have to you have to live by them.
Yep. What's a daily habit that keeps you grounded?
Um, that's a good one. I just always kind of for like purpose, just have something to do. Want to just get out and work on something, whether it's that's something related to my personal, to the family, to something professionally. Always, there's always something that I'm working on moving forward. That's not really an idle person.
Okay. And the last question was, what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received? I think you mentioned one of those earlier.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's so many there's so many things that you could just quote off the top of my head that make you laugh. And I remember at the time, and most of the business advice when you first get it, you don't really like it because it doesn't, you're getting it because you're not doing it. And so I mean, it was a friend of my a mentor of mine said, make your strength productive and your weaknesses irrelevant.
Yeah.
And my takeaway from that is look, there's certain things that you have a unique ability at and you're really good. I mean, you're great and those are your unique abilities and just do those and then just kind of push off everything else to everybody else. And the challenge with that is, Scott, it's contrary. It's if you can do that successfully as an entrepreneur, you'll be a success. But that's not necessarily how in other parts of life is. That theory doesn't work like in education.
Mm,
Like when you're in school, who's the best student? It's the person that gets 7 A's.
yeah.
They get A's in all of them. And that's then they're what? They're the best student. And that's why I never was the best student because I didn't get 7 A's. You know what I mean? I was always good at, I was always kind of interested in two or three things. And I never could figure out how those gears moved around on the test that, did that in the aptitude test. And as a result, I did really badly in math. So, you know,
Well,
anyway, so
being the
to
best
me, that
student
was
isn't a predictor of being the best entrepreneur. So there you
no, but
go.
it's just different. So it's like sometimes say, well, I did this. I came out of school. I did this. I said, well, it's like, it's different because I think it bothers some people at times when they say, why the heck is that person good at what they do? I mean, like an entrepreneur, how did they make it happen? They can't tie their shoes, their shirt's not tucked in, they're not doing this or whatever, and then or they're loud or whatever. And you think because it's just they have this unique ability
Yeah.
that other people don't, and then on that particular thing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, last question for today. Imagine you could do it all over again. You start from scratch, Amex, and could only bring one lesson from your experience, which I know you've got lots of them. What lesson would it be?
I mean, so I mean, like I would go back into the future, as like I'm just like
Yeah,
today, I'm starting today.
like if what would essentially what would you change? I mean, if you could do it all over again, and at the very beginning, what perspective perhaps might be different? What lesson would you bring?
I mean, I think the lesson. Well, I think the lesson I would just bring that is consistent with whatever is just start and never give up.
Mm,
You just got first off, you got to start. Way too many people talk way too much. I mean, just do something, start it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're not going to be Picasso at the beginning, and then just start moving along. And then as you move along, you might find, hey, if this is working or not working. And then you keep moving forward and reiterating, and never give up. Because look, if I had given up, there was lots of opportunities to give up. There was more opportunities to give up than to succeed. And if you really looked at it, I mean, truth be told, I could tell you, I probably should have given up. And frankly, if I'd thought about it more, I probably should have thought about it more and given up. But I didn't. I just kept moving forward and said, I'm going to do this, and you go forward and you do that, and then you just come out the other side. And the reality is, what's of that is, when people tell you, well, my plan is to do this, well, good. It's going to always, who once told me was, it's always going to take twice as long and cost at least twice as much money.
yep.
I mean, that's kind of a pretty good one. Usually it ends up costing more than twice as much money, but it always takes like twice as long. I can't think of too many when I got them done ahead of plan.
Yeah. Yeah. That is life. So, Fred, you could certainly do a master class in scaling, and perhaps I have the opportunity to get you back on the podcast to talk more about other facets of your scaling journey. But in the meantime, really appreciate you joining the show today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
And to my listeners, we've got many more amazing guests lined up. Please subscribe, leave feedback, and share this episode in your feeds. That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Remember, entrepreneurship isn't just about spotting opportunities. It's about taking disciplined action to bring them to life. Hope you'll join again next time as we continue to unpack the complexities of entrepreneurism.